great. Okay, so let's take a look at the responses that you have come up with for these statements. So let's start with, when I have the flu, I can't think. An example of a response to this one. When I have the flu, I can't think. How has a statement like this prevented you from thinking when you have the flu? Okay. Another example on that one? Yeah.
That's an interesting thought to hold when you have the flu.
That's an interesting thought to hold when you have the flu. Now, exactly. Now, another one, so you must have had the flu when you came up with that. So that's an example of the fact that you have this belief proves it's not true. I bet you think about that a lot when you're sick. Excellent. Okay. What was that? Yes, one more.
I wonder how thinking about the flu in this limiting way restricts your ability to think.
Ooh, how does thinking about the flu in this limiting way restrict your ability to think? Oh, wonderful. You have to be careful what you learn, or you'll learn something you shouldn't, and it'll damn you to hell. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Yes.
I don't know. Isn't that a belief that will damn you to hell?
Isn't that a belief that will damn you to hell? Yeah. So excellent. Any other examples of yes?
I'd say something. As you learn this belief, have you ever been to hell?
Since you've learned this belief, have you been to hell? So excellent, excellent. And now another example, you have to be careful. And being careful is what kind of criterion? Oh, it's away from or towards? You have to be careful? It's a towards. So most of the criteria in here are away from ones, but we can also do it with a towards one. So you must not have been very careful when you came up with that belief. Right? Okay, so whenever there's a towards criterion, we negate it somehow, or how does this belief stop you from it? Okay, if I feel good, then bad things will happen.
Isn't that a bad way to feel about life?
Yes.
Isn't that a bad way to feel about life? Okay. So bad things happening is the negative criterion. I don't like bad things happening. This belief is one of those bad things that happen sometimes. Okay.
So when you feel bad, do good things happen?
When you feel bad, do good things happen? Now that's a little different pattern. Keep the pattern. It's not quite this one. If you look at the components, if you feel bad, do good things happen? Does it go meta? Yes, exactly. So in order to be this pattern, it needs to include talking about the belief from the outside. However, keep the pattern. Anytime that you're trying to generate examples of one pattern, if you generate something else, then that's great. It's just a solution to another problem, so to speak. Okay. Now, if I feel good, then bad things will happen. Other examples of that one? So you must have really felt good when you came up with that belief. It's another way to kind of subtly equate the belief with one of those bad things that happens. Okay, quality time is more important than quantity time.
How is that belief preventing you from living a quality life?
How is this belief preventing you from living a quality life? So quality is a criterion there he's going towards.
I feel hurt that this belief means you'll only be spending 10 minutes with me.
Hey, I feel hurt that this belief means you'll be spending 10 minutes with me. Only 10 minutes with me. Okay, now I want to unpack this one a little bit. It does go meta, right? She's talking about this belief from the outside. Utilize criterion from within the belief. That's a piece that I don't see there. Okay? So if you said, I feel hurt that this statement reduces the quality of my time or something along those lines, then that would be a match for the criteria within the belief. It's implied. With criteria, the more that you match the words, the more effective it is typically. Yes?
The fact that you have this belief proves not true.
Okay, so can we say the fact that you have this belief proves it's not true? Is there a way to do that? Does anybody think of a way to do that? Off the top of my head, nothing comes to my mind. But. So how about this? Oh, yes.
Or could you say, it's interesting that you took this quantity of time to make such a quality belief?
Okay. So you must have taken too much time coming up with this belief, or something along those lines. So, or you must have quality time is more important. You must have been in a very poor quality moment when you came up with this belief. Yeah, something along those lines. Okay.
I probably wouldn't take more than a moment or two to consider that belief.
I probably wouldn't take more than a moment or two to consider that belief. Okay, so next one, life's a bitch and then you die.
Is this belief part of this painful life?
Is this belief part of that painful life? Yeah,
That's a bitch of a belief to have to live with.
That's a bitch of a belief to have to live with. Okay, great. And I want to comment there that, again, Diane's using the exact criteria word of bitch, and that, for somebody, is going to make it probably even more effective. And with yours, it was certainly implied.
I was not sure if in English we can say bitch life.
Oh, bitch of a life.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. I totally understand. Okay. So, or beliefs like this can kill you. I mean, maybe you don't want to go that far, but. Don't you think that belief is a bitch?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, excellent. No matter how many nice experiences I have, I'm never satisfied. Are you satisfied with that belief?
How is satisfying that belief leaving you unsatisfied?
How will satisfying this belief leave you unsatisfied? I like that one. I wouldn't be satisfied with that belief either. Yeah, and I like the either presupposition at the end too. So it presupposes that the person is not satisfied with the belief. So excellent. You guys are coming up with wonderful examples.
Isn't that not satisfying?
Isn't that not satisfying? Yes. Or isn't that unsatisfying? Yes.
I wrote unsatisfying.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Now, the world is not a safe place. The world is not a safe place.
Sorry. So do you think it's safe to discuss this belief here?
So do you think it's safe to discuss this belief here? Now, let's examine that. Let's unpack it a little bit. It goes meta, talks about the belief. It definitely utilizes the criterion from within the belief, which is being safe. Does it do so in such a way as to blow out the belief? So the person would have to answer yes in order for it to blow out the belief. And so that's a little bit iffy. So other examples though. Yes?
Does this belief make you feel safer?
Does this belief make you feel safer? The world is not a safe place. Does this belief? So if I try that on, does this belief make you feel safer? For me, it reinforces the belief if I try that on. Okay, somebody else. Yes?
We're in a safe place now and we're still in the world, aren't we?
We're in a safe place now and we're still in the world, aren't we? Now that again, Paul, the piece that I'm noticing that you're missing is going meta. So what you're not doing there is talking about the belief as a whole from the outside. Yes?
That's
That's a safe way to see things. Okay. Now, again, for me, that's going to say, yes, I want to keep the belief. You know, I have to believe the world is not a safe place in order to be safe. Yes.
I put feeling that way about the world could be feeling that way about the world be hazardous?
Feeling that way about the world could be hazardous. For me, that blows it out. Or, again, to use the criteria word from within here, feeling that way about the world makes it unsafe, doesn't it? Yes?
Isn't that an unsafe way of believing?
Isn't that an unsafe way of believing? Okay. So for me, that makes me want to step out of the belief. Okay, next one. No pain, no gain. Now this one's a little convoluted because it has already 2 negations in it right off the bat. No pain, no gain.
What do you gain by that?
What do you gain by that? Yeah, there we go. What do you gain by that? So just to unpack this one a little bit. So gain is a wanted criterion, right? I want gain. So, and he's delivering it in the form of a rhetorical question. What do you gain by that? Again, with the nonverbals, that's going to change the meaning of it. If he says, so what do you gain by that? You know, then that would reinforce it. But with the nonverbals of a rhetorical question, what do you gain by that? Then that works to blow it out. Okay, any other examples on no pain, no gain? Did you gain something with this pain belief? Now, this one, it goes meta. She's saying with this pain belief, utilizes the criterion, did you gain something? In your experience, if you try it on, does it blow it out? Could reaffirm it. Now, if you change your nonverbals a little bit, though, so did you gain something with this pain belief? You know, then your nonverbal presuppositions are, the answer is no. So, okay, one other way to do this one. So you must not have had any pain when you came up with this belief, right? Because no pain means no gain. So that presupposes this belief is no gain. Okay. You must have been in no pain whatsoever when you came up with this belief. Okay. Now, when I go into a social situation, I have to be the best at something.
How has being the best at something prevented you from going into social situations?
Okay. How has being the best at something prevented you from going into a social situation? So now let's look at that one again with these components. It's missing one of them. Which one is it missing?
Going meta?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So another potential example. Yes.
Is this your best belief?
Is this your best belief? Yes, actually, that's something very similar to that is what worked for this person, which is the person responded with, so are you the best at that? At that machination that she went through before walking into a room? And for her, then that blew it out because then she was already the best at something. She didn't have to think about it before she walked into a room. Okay, now, next one. I'm not as good as I should be.
Is this belief help you to be better?
Does this belief help you to be better? Okay, now let's unpack this again. It goes meta, this belief. Well, it utilizes a word in the same family as the criterion in the belief. So be better as opposed to as good. If you change it to, does this belief help you to be as good as you should be? Then that utilizes closer the criterion within the belief. Now, if you're the person with this belief, does it reinforce it or does it blow it out? Tend to reinforce it. So, however, it's a good start. It already is doing these first 2 things. How could that be tweaked a little bit to blow out the belief? Yes?
How does this belief stop you from being as good as you can be?
How does this belief stop you from being as good as you can be? Now, that,
I deliberately
you deliberately change the criterion. And that can be useful to do or unuseful to do depending on, you just have to notice the response of the person. So I think the criterion, as good as you can be, is more useful. And whether it will be as effective with that particular individual or not, we don't know. But the as good as piece is utilized. So that's a match for the pattern. He makes too big of generalizations. Okay, all together.
That's a big.
Okay, that's a pretty big generalization to make, isn't it? Okay, terrific. Now, with this pattern, by the way, how many of you would say that you got something that was an example of this pattern, at least on, say, 3 or 4 of the sentences? At least on a few of the sentences. That's great. Now, some of these sentences are really pretty convoluted, or they're not an easy matchup for this pattern. So I gave you some stretches with these examples. Yes?
And then, what did you say I'm not as good as I should be?
This belief, well, the example that you gave back was,
So how does this belief stop you from being as good as you can be?
how does this belief stop you from being as good as you can be? Or this belief isn't as good as it should be, is it? So there would be another example. So, and both of those examples are useful, in my opinion. Okay, now we get to then, one more thing I wanted to mention about this pattern before moving on is that how many of you already, the examples are coming up really easily and spontaneously, at least on some of them, such as if I say, that's too big of a generalization, or I hate generalizations, then you can automatically and spontaneously reply to that with this pattern. So that's terrific. So your unconscious is already getting some competence with this. And the more you utilize it and the more you stretch yourself with statements for which it's not quite as obvious how it might fit, the more it'll start becoming automatic in other situations as well. But it's something to continue playing with over time. With this pattern, usually it takes practice to get it more and more fully into the unconscious competence sphere. Okay, so now on to the next pattern. In these trainings, very often somebody comes up to me somewhere along the line and says, okay, Tamara, which of these patterns do I really need to learn? What one would be a good one to learn and use? And so, of course, I say all of them, right? And there are certain patterns that are so effective that I would put them in the like top 10 list at least. This is one of those. It doesn't apply in every case, but it applies very often. And when it does, it's extremely useful. It's easy to produce. It's a really terrific pattern. I can't say enough good things about it. So, in my view, it's a real treat we're going to be going into now. So, examples. One time, Connie Ray was demonstrating language patterns to a group, and somebody from the back of the room had a limitation. He says, I get frustrated when I'm working with difficult clients. And so Connie Ray called him up. And when he got to the front of the room, she had him restate the belief. So he said, well, it's like this. My clients come in, and they tell me their problems, and I tell them what to do, and they give me every reason in the world not to do it. And, he's clearly getting frustrated right there on the spot. And Connie Ray said, oh, and do they help you in other ways too? Ooh, I know. Not even close to fair, is it? So, so he has smoke boiling out of his ears, and he didn't even know what she said after that. Okay, another example. I was working with a man who had insomnia, and when he associated into that moment when he couldn't sleep, what he was aware of was the sense that he just had to think about the next day or he wouldn't be prepared. And so I said, so in this moment, as you're wanting to sleep and yet you are thinking about the next day, how does thinking about the next day actually prevent you from being as prepared as you want to be? How would just letting go of those thoughts and letting yourself relax give you the best preparation for the day to come? And so that allowed him to let go of it and go to sleep. Okay, I was working with another client once who we were doing parts work at the time. And of course, you can apply language patterns to parts as well. And as we were doing this work, we were doing some other NLP pattern, and he got to this sense that there was a part of him here in his head and there was a part of him here in his heart. And then there was this part in between that was blocking the two. It was kind of like interfering with any communication between the two. And so I had him step inside and ask this part of him, so what is it that you want? You probably never heard that question in here before. And so he turns inside and he asks and he says, well, this part of me is really trying to keep me safe. It really wants safety. It feels like it'd be too dangerous if my head and my heart were communicating with each other. We're in touch. So I said, okay, so thank this part of you for being there, of course, and for wanting to keep you safe. That's really an important thing. And now ask this part of you, in what way does blocking the communication between your head and your heart actually make you less safe? And so he just took a moment to process that. And from the outside, I could see major shifts going on. It was just all starting to loosen up. And so I had him ask then, and ask this part of you, how will actually facilitating your head and heart being connected together, how will this actually create the kind of safety that you really want to experience? And so he said, yes. He didn't even answer the question. He was just kind of melting. So there's an example of using it in a context of other NLP work. One more example of this pattern. Connie Ray was working with a woman, and her issue was that she couldn't tell her husband what she wanted sexually because if she did, she would be limiting him. And so Connie Ray said, well, let me ask you this. Have you had the experience of giving somebody a gift and you know exactly what that person's going to like the best, and just the wonderful experience of giving them this gift and seeing their response to getting exactly what they want? And as she's talking, this woman is nodding her head and, she's really getting into it. And Connie Ray said, now, were you aware that you've been stopping your husband from being able to do this, haven't you? You've been limiting him from having this experience of the joy of giving you exactly what you want. And she kind of goes, ah, kind of crumbles. And then she follows that up with, so in what way can actually letting your husband know what you want give him the choice now of giving you that if he wants to? So that rather than being limited, he'll have another choice in addition to the choices that he already has, won't he? So are you starting to, again, without naming it or describing it, are you starting to notice the pattern that I'm using? Okay. So if I were to take a limiting belief, such as I can't make a difference around here because management doesn't walk their talk. How could you apply this pattern to this belief? I can't make a difference around here because management doesn't walk their talk. Okay, so do they help you to make a difference in other ways too? You've got an interesting delivery there. Management doesn't. Yes. I have to unpack it before I can say if it fits the pattern. But yes, you're presupposing that management not walking their talk actually helps the person make a difference around here. Okay, and she did it by presupposing it, so excellent. Gold star. So what we're doing here is we're actually, the message is, in what way is your belief actually totally false and the opposite of your belief really true? That's what we're really asking. We call this reversing presuppositions pattern. Sorry, it got a little bit cut off on the top on this page. The reversing presuppositions pattern. Our message is, how is your belief the opposite of what's true? How is the opposite of what you thought really true? And a standard format for coming up with the question here is, so how does management not walking their talk actually, now that you think about it, cause you to be able to make a difference around here even better? And then, of course, you can explore alternate deliveries to make it even more effective. Okay. And then, of course, we can flip it to the opposite. So how would management walking their talk actually stop you from making as big a difference as you could in the company? So there we're saying how does, or how will, how might the opposite of A actually cause more of B? Okay? So what I suggest is use this pattern first, and then when this pattern gets really comfortable for you, then try out doing what Anne did and presupposing it instead of saying it directly. So this is a way of asking for it directly. And then presupposing it is kind of like the next level. Shall we try this out with other beliefs? Okay, so somebody give me a limiting belief. The more limiting, the better. Women are inferior. And how do you know that women are inferior? For this one, we really do need an A and a B.
Because they're weak.
Women are inferior because they're weak. Okay, now I'm going to do a redefine in here as well. So in what way do the things that you perceive as weak about women actually mean that they're better? Don't know. Okay, so, or we can say to presuppose it more. So how do the things that you perceive as, no, excuse me, let's start again on that one. So is there anything else in addition to the things that you perceive as weak that cause women to be better, be superior? Okay, so another example of a limiting belief. And by the way, that's an example of this pattern. I wouldn't actually in real life be presupposing that women are better. So in real life, I would not do quite exactly this pattern. I'd probably do something more along the lines of, so how do the things you're perceiving about weak, as being weak about women, how do those actually mean that women are just as good in other ways than men are? Or how do the things that you're perceiving as weak mean that women are better in those ways? So rather than saying that women are better overall, I'm not a person who goes around saying those things either. Okay, so somebody else with a limiting belief.
Because I'm rich, all I'll get is gold diggers from women.
Because you're rich, all I'll get is gold diggers. So how can you utilize your money to make it possible for you to have an even better quality relationship? Okay. Or how would being poor reduce the quality of the person you could attract or be with? So I can do it both ways. Okay? All right, so let me give you an example and let you come up with the pattern. So what if my belief is making mistakes means that I'm not successful. Making mistakes means I'm not successful.
So how has making mistakes actually helped you with your success?
So how has making mistakes actually helped you with your success? Excellent. Okay.
Or how many of your mistakes have led to your success?
How many of your mistakes have led to your success? Now, one thing, Diane, I'm going to just mention, that's a little different in that you're going for a counterexample then, rather than saying mistakes across the board. One thing about this pattern is that it's very bold. It goes for, how is this belief not true across the board? So now, if you wanted to do something similar to that, though, you could say, so in addition to your mistakes, are there other things as well that have led to your success? So that you're keeping all the mistakes in the picture. Okay. All right, let's try another one. So when my staff is unenthusiastic, I get angry. When my staff is unenthusiastic, I get angry. So now we can just plug the formula, by the way. So we can just say how, you might go to the word can on this one. How can your staff being unenthusiastic actually, now that you think about it, cause you to be very calm? Now here, you can also ask the person, so what is the opposite of be for you? So what is the opposite of being angry? Then I could say, oh, well, just being pleasant, feeling pleasant, or whatever the opposite is, and you can plug that in to here.
Could you reverse it and say, what other behaviors do you have that dampen the enthusiasm of your staff?
What other behaviors do you have that dampen the enthusiasm of your staff? So there what you're doing, you're taking A causes B, and you're saying, well, instead, B causes A. You're presupposing your getting angry reduces the enthusiasm of your staff. And then, of course, you're elegantly presupposing that by saying, are there other behaviors that you have that also dampen your staff's enthusiasm? So that is a different pattern. So it's a reversal of the sequence. Now here, when we say reversing presuppositions, we don't mean changing the order of it, but rather just we're changing it to the opposite. We're saying, how is the opposite true? The reversing sequence pattern, though, is another useful thing to keep as something to play with. Okay, so what I'd like to do next is take a short break, after which we can have an exercise to play with this pattern some more and develop more fluidity with it. And by the way, feel free to just use these equations to start out with. And then once that becomes fluid for you, then experiment with alternate deliveries. So I wouldn't just spend a lot of time on coming up with the most perfect delivery when you're first starting to play with the pattern. So just kind of blurt out one of these formulas for the first few times and then explore other ways. All right, so about a 10-minute break and then exercise. And the exercise, we're going to go back to the familiar sleight of mouth exercise format in groups of 3. Okay.